Let's do it. There we are. Okay.
Great.
Welcome, Amanda Hummingbird, to the listening. So, yes, I don't know about you, but I am feeling a bit all over the place this morning. Um, yeah, some days I wake up good, some days I seem to be a bit dishevelled inside. So, yeah, that's a little heads up. If that's maybe where we'll go on this journey. If I start falling apart, you'll know why.
Don't worry, I'm likely to just burst into tears at any moment. So
Well, we'll be crying together. Maybe it'll be a weepy one. Yeah, but what I did think was it might be interesting to just ground us in with a sort of few moments of some kind of guided meditation, because I know you're good at this kind of thing. How do you feel about doing something just to kind of get us all here and now?
yeah, I'd like to do that. Let's do that. So if we just close our eyes and just begin to become aware of your breath, the movement of the breath in the body, the quality of the breath as well. Just notice how your breath is, how it feels. And just begin, if it feels good, to deepen your breath and lengthen your breath. Breathing in and out the nose, if that feels good too. With the exhale, feel for a softening, sinking feeling. Allowing your awareness, your attention to drop down into the seat of your body, into the root. And with every breath, with every exhale, inviting a little bit more relaxing into the body, into every cell in your body, into the edges of your body. And then bringing your awareness down to your tailbone and all the area around the root chakra, pelvis, your sacrum, lower half of your body. And with the exhale, feel for a rooting feeling, a grounding feeling, a connection down with to Mother Earth. As she rises up to hold us and support us in every moment. And imagine, visualize, feel for your tailbone, the tip of your tailbone, just relaxing a little bit more with your breath and extending down into the earth like an anchor, rooting into the earth. And feel the hold of the Divine Mother just steadying you, steadying us, holding us, supporting us, nourishing us. Allowing any thoughts that arise to come through and just offer them down to Mother Earth. Allowing for a clearing and allowing for space to arise in and around you. And then allowing your awareness to rise up to your heart center. And just resting the attention there in the center of the heart, connecting to the root, to the ground, to the earth. And just notice how that feels. What is showing up. And allow the breath to acknowledge it. Allow the breath to acknowledge any tenderness that there might be that shows up. And we invite in some space. We ask that what needs to be said, felt, seen, and heard will be revealed for the highest good of all. And slowly bring your awareness back into the space around you, into the room around you. Still feeling that rooted feeling through the lower half of your body. And when you're ready, just begin to open your eyes.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah.
The dog agrees.
Dog agrees. She probably wants to come in as well.
Wow. Mm. Yeah, so interesting. Just to come into the moment and be aware of what's going on inside is so always so useful.
Yeah.
Realizing all the tension that was in my upper body. I mean, I hold tension a lot in my jaw. Um, but yeah, so much up here that needs to kind of just let go. And it's great grounding. I can always ground really quickly, especially with my lower half of the body. I find that's almost instantaneous. As soon as I bring my awareness to grounding, I feel like from the waist down, I'm totally anchored and rooted in. And then I notice all this kind of the upper half that's kind of holding on. So,
Yeah.
oh, yeah.
I kind of have been the opposite for a very long time. It's quite interesting. And I wonder if that's kind of the difference between the kind of the masculine essence and the female essence. Because I feel like up here, I'm really good at kind of letting things go and letting emotions rise and feeling it all. And what I've really had to learn, especially in this last year, is the grounding that allows me to kind of be held
Mm,
and not kind of allow that emotion to just fly away from me. And and, and I think that finding that way of those two kind of energies to merge is for me what has allowed allowed yeah, allowed these things to move through me, but not get away from me, not allow myself to get lost in it either. um, mm. Yeah, and that groundedness is both are essential.
yeah.
And need each other.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the bit you did about connecting the center and the root with the ground and anchoring that, and then connecting the heart in to those things. So sort of joining up the dots.
Yeah.
That was really powerful. Because because from what you're describing there, it sounds like it's very heart based, what you're talking about. That is that true for you, that it's coming from the heart? So
Yeah,
being able to tie the two together,
yeah,
that feels really good to me. And I think, yeah, the heart, I spend a lot of time in my head, but
mm,
actually I'm much more comfortable in my body and my heart. That's actually where I naturally spend more time, I feel anyway. And it's only stress that takes me into my head.
yeah,
Because I know some people are very, I know people who are very much in their heads, but quite naturally, and it's not a stressy thing. It's kind of where
yeah,
their sort of center is in a way. But for me, it really is in the, well, even the earth. I'd say beyond my body, through my body, I feel a very strong connection to the earth anyway. But also my heart. I'm really a heart person as well, actually. Um,
yeah. I mean, I truly believe that we all are, and
yeah,
we've just
sure.
forgotten how to be, and that actually the heart love is the currency that runs through everything, and 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 all emotions. Love runs through all emotions that run through us, and the whole kind of head thing sometimes, I know for myself, not so much now, but in the past, it's been a really great distraction away from being in my body and being in my heart. Um, and it feels like now, especially, and I'm working with a more spiritual teacher now, and what I really feel from her, from what she shared with me, is it feels like we're moving out of a very much thought-based living, and having to come into our bodies again and learn how to feel and experience and follow that inner guidance that is inside of us, and let go of this chase of control, and actually allowing this natural intuition, heart-based intuition, to guide us through this and navigate us through this incredibly challenging and crazy times. um, and that feels for me, that I can feel the truth in that,
Mm.
and that really, that's kind of what's drawn me in this last year of, um, really letting everything go as I've been doing it, in order to find a new way of being. If we continue to hold on to these things, um, tightly, we're not allowing space for something really new to come through.
Mm.
And that's really hard. I found it really hard to let go of these things, because it's everything that I spent the last 4 years since my marriage ended creating this identity of who I thought I needed to be in order to survive, in order to validate myself, acknowledge who I was. And actually, it's actually in letting all that go that I'm really, really discovering who I really am, who we really all really are.
Oh yeah, you've hit something really current for me there, which is we have got to the end of a journey that's perhaps been unfolding for thousands of years now, which has been a journey into the head,
Yeah.
especially in the West. I mean, it's kind of been pushed by the West, or what we call the West, but that sort of, I guess it's a Christian and then a sort of Enlightenment scientific push. But we've been so culturally in our heads, and our culture is completely made, almost completely, not completely, but largely made of head stuff.
Mm.
And we've reached the end of it because it doesn't work, because it's become toxic, because we became so detached from our bodies, our hearts, and the greater body of the earth around us, that we've been doing so much harm to all those parts of ourselves and the environment.
Yeah.
And it's reached this point now where, I mean, we don't have much time left if we carry on in that way. And so there is this massive upwelling of reconnection, I feel, going on. Because, you know, you're talking about it, I'm feeling it. I look around, and even people who were seemingly so detached from all of that are showing signs of having some connection going on, or it really feels like it's moving through everybody.
Yeah.
As a necessity, as a greater force.
Yeah.
um, and we're trying to think of ways out of the situation, but of course it's the thinking that's the problem.
Yeah.
And it's feeling, it's both kind of physically intuiting and feeling in the heart. Those are the intelligences that we now need to kind of release into from the head to show us the way. And that's been very much my journey of late, has been a remembering, first of all, of the body, um, which has been an incredible journey for me, largely caused by me I've been living in the woods for nearly 17 years now. And it's been a journey of reconnection with the land. But the way I could reconnect through the land was through the senses, was through the body. And it happened very naturally. It was like a very gentle kind of education where the land was sort of pulling me down into my body and revealing itself to me in all its kind of beauty and love. I mean, it's really love. It's such a nourishing love that you get from the land if you open to it. And what's been revealed, if anything, in my head has been an understanding that this is the way through this mess, is to find a way to reconnect with where we live. So whoever you are, wherever you live, I feel like if you form a relationship with the land where you live, it gives you so much meaning. It gives you so much support, nourishment, health, all of those things. That's what it does. It's our natural state, obviously. We've been on a weird adventure, but our natural state is to be completely enmeshed in a relationship. It is an inseparable relationship, actually. It's only an illusion that we've got into. But I'm seeing, like, whenever I get stuck now, I'm trying to unlearn that habit of trying to think my way out of it, because there's no solution to be found intellectually. It's the intuitions that are showing me, it's the feelings. So if I can listen to my heart, listen to my gut, quite often now the solution I'm looking for appears almost immediately. But it's a habit. It's a habit, Yeah.
Yeah, it's so beautiful to hear that, and I've just embarked on this journey myself of connecting back to, connecting to the land, which I've never really done in my heart. I was brought up in Hong Kong in, concrete jungle, and I never really had the experience of living around, surrounded by nature, and in the last year, just coming back, moving out into the countryside, and just observing and connecting to the elements and stopping. All I can hear whenever I hear what needs to be done, all I can hear is, we just all need to just stop. Right. And this COVID that's shown up, that everyone's trying to not stop and trying to, oh, we need to go back to how things were. I think it's just the divine way of saying, everybody just stop. And actually, the moments that the whole world stopped, look what happened. This kind of beauty and this peace and this silence just arose, that just kind of rippled out across the planet. And And I feel like that, there's something in that, in slowing down, let go of the urgency, look at all the, for me, this is my journey at the moment, looking at all the desires and the wants that have me, on the hook, and letting them go, because they all come from some distorted version of myself, which is not going to serve me or anyone in the future, or in service to the planet. And yeah, I think definitely this looking, you look at nature and what I'm feeling from the land, nothing happens fast. It all happens very, very slowly. Why should we be any different? And how can we, rather than feel like we need to conquer the planet, how can we participate in the alchemy of life, just like nature does? We've forgotten how to be in that way, and it feels like this is the remembering. How can we participate in that relationship in a way that flows, that is easeful, without trying too hard? And as far as I can see for myself anyway, the only way that I'm able to do that is just to continue when things show up, rather than grasp at something to fix it or distract myself from it or talk my way or think my way out of it. I literally just have to sit and let it burn through me. Mm. And most of the times I'm on my knees in a pile of tears on the floor. But it works. And then afterwards you feel this clearing, and that's how it works. It's like just whatever comes up needs to move, just like everything's just constantly moving. And actually, when you sit in that silence, there is so much content in the silence that thinking, words and thoughts don't, they're not resonating on that same vibration as the silence, the content there. And it's in that, from my experience, it's like in that silence, in that content is what helps to empty us and become purer vessels for what wants to come through next.
Mm. Yeah. It's the stopping and taking care of everybody, and allowing all of that shit, all of the poison, all of the hurt to just come through. Yeah. And to feel it and to let it go, and to feel it and to let it go. When we first went into lockdown, it was wonderful because it was like a forced retreat for pretty much the entire planet.
Yeah.
And there was that tremendous peace at the beginning.
Yeah.
Because everybody kind of did sort of stay at home, and it was a bit of a novelty, and they weren't sort of impoverished if they weren't already, or they hadn't lost their jobs. So there was a kind of holiday feeling initially.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a massive generalization, of course, actually, and it wasn't even particularly true personally for me, because the work I was doing stopped immediately, so my income stopped. However, there was that period where it was like a big exhale, and there was a small window into how the world actually is.
Yeah.
And the land and the animals were kind of showing us, like, it could be like this all the time, folks. Yeah. There is, if you can just use those amazing minds of yours to rewire it a bit, you could actually be living a lot more in a lot more relaxed way, a lot more harmonious way. You could be taking care of everybody and all their needs, and it could be quite a beautiful place to be.
Yeah.
But of course, like our personal journeys, you you don't get it on the first go round. It usually takes a lot of goes round before something finally clicks. Or
Oh,
so it was like a little sort of announcement of, okay, this doesn't work. We really do need to stop.
yeah.
Um, and of course, now we're doing all we can to sort of patch it up and control it and put it back together.
Right. Yeah.
And it all
Ev-
feels
yeah.
wrong, and everybody in their guts knows it's not working, and everybody knows, but
Yeah.
we're sort of trapped into habit and fear of, what happens if I don't have my job or this or that. It's very much fear based. Um, so it's this thing of what we're going through personally, which is I know from what you've said that you're obviously having a similar experience to me, in that we're really going to those places where it hurts, but instead of avoiding it or filling the space up with something else so we don't have to feel it, or whatever those escape mechanisms are, whatever those addictions are that take us away from having to be in that discomfort that lies
Yeah.
at the heart of who we are, getting into that and just being with it to see what it is so that it can then be let go of.
Yeah.
That seems like what the whole culture needs to do.
It
Almost
does.
like stop, let everything go, and then perhaps we can just pick the pieces that we actually think are useful and work. And there may not be many. If we stopped and looked at everything we have
Mhm.
and really sort of from a place of calm and openness looked at, does this really serve us or anything else? Do we actually need this? There probably wouldn't be much left. There'd be some things which we've got that are valuable, but perhaps a lot of it just no longer is no longer fit for purpose. It's time to sort of lay it aside.
Oh,
Um, but I feel like the way it's happening is like this. Individuals are going through it,
mhm.
and it's in that fragmented way that it seems to be happening, and that feels like the right way, because any kind of mass organized thing is just the same old shit. It's an idea that doesn't fit reality, and we're not going to find a way through like that. It
No.
really is about owning your own stuff, doing your own healing, doing your own work, and then from that place you're able then to say, okay, I'm here now to do some good in the world. How can I help? What have I got that I can bring to
Mhm.
help to make it a more beautiful place, to make it better for my children, for everyone's children, for the environment. How can we do that? You can only come to that from a place of having sorted out what's going on in yourself first. Because a lot of people, and I was one of them, was tend to kind of use the world and saving it and sorting it out as another way of avoiding taking on your own shit. I did
Yes.
that for years. I was very
Yeah.
oh yeah, very kind
Mm.
of radical and outspoken, and kind of just yeah, just putting all my energy into fixing the exterior and trying to make it perfect because
Yeah.
I hadn't sorted out or accepted who I was and understood what it was in me, what that hole was in me that I was trying to fill with
Yeah.
stuff, with the world, with projects, with high-minded undertakings, whatever. It was
Yeah.
all distraction.
Yeah. It's distraction, and it's interesting, like the addiction thing. And it's funny. One of the ones I listened to was your talk when you were talking on addiction. I can't remember who with, but for me, that's really the last year has been about letting go of, desires. To be truly free is to be free from our desires. But we have lived in a world where it's so easy to satisfy our desires so quickly. But it's short-lived. And then there's always something, you always want more and so in every situation when you're living from this place of wants, needs, desires, you kind of go into the situation. I'm speaking from my own experience here with the eyes of, oh, what am I going to get out of this for me? And so I had to really begin to look at that, like, oh, how sneaky the ego can be, and how sneaky my mind can be at manipulating situations, really, so that I can get a little bit of love here, or I can get a little bit of love there. For me, it's all about love. Relationships. It's been my entire story, my whole life, and so it's been letting go of this fairy tale that I've been holding on to about, and the desires, of, oh, well, if I have this, then I'll be okay. And that's not the, that it's an illusion. And actually, when now I can come into it and I can feel that, sometimes it's a chase. You're chasing carrots, constantly chasing something. And so you let go of the chase, and that's the hardest thing, is letting go, is letting go of that chase. And then eventually, once you've sat with it and you've sobbed endless amount of tears, there comes a point, which I'm now experiencing, where I catch myself and I go into a situation and I recognize, oh, this is where I used to go in thinking, oh, I'm going to get this. And now I can go in and say, what can I give? How can I serve here now? But that takes in a commitment, for me, a commitment to cultivate my own relationship with the divine, with God, and let go of everything, that all the control that I was trying to control the circumstances in my environment so that it would be a certain way, so I would feel a certain way, which never worked. And just hand myself over. Just say, I haven't got a clue what I'm doing, and I don't know anything. But what I do know is what I feel. I know my experiences that I've experienced in meditation, the experience that I experience when I do allow the heartbreak to literally crack me open. And in that cracking open, there's space, like this space that comes through, and you experience something that is greater than who we think we are, and that guides me, and it's it's constant letting go of the desire, catching yourself when you are noticing when you're chasing again, and letting go of the chase. And with social media, that's why I let it go, because all I can see on there, with myself included, was I was just chasing, and it was exhausting. And there was kind of this urgency that I would get caught up in. And so letting that go again just kind of created this, all right, it literally is like pulling the handbrake over and over again. And just, yeah.
So when you're cracked open,
yeah,
and you feel that space, that was a wonderful description. I got a little feeling.
mm-hmm.
I wonder if you could just describe what you're actually sensing, feeling, experiencing when you're feeling that openness.
It's, I can feel it right now, and it's because my heart is tender today, and it was yesterday. My divorce came through last week, and it's been, and it's interesting because I think I first met you And when I came out to the shed, when things were starting to crack in my marriage, and it's been a long old journey, you know, we separated 4 years ago, and so it's this this tenderness that has come through, and what I feel from all the last few years of resentment and anger and pain and heartbreak and heartache that has cracked me open. And now I feel it's euphoric. It's almost like a euphoria. It kind of feels like, you know, yeah, ecstasy, I guess, and really pure love, an overflowing well of love that lives inside all of us. And all you can do when it starts to flow, when it cracks you open, is all you just, it needs to go somewhere. So you want to give it out. It just needs to go. You don't want to hold on to it. And it just continues to, yeah. So every cracking open is this that comes from, it's like every pain, every emotion that we try to avoid is a portal to this divine love within us.
So what are the sensations? Do you feel it in your body? How do you
Yeah.
actually experience it?
Mm. It's like this. It's a lightness. It's light. It's like lightness inside, and I know it's a physical experience of lightness. There's a It's so difficult to describe with words, because words they're not, yeah, they just don't do it justice. And um,
Yeah.
light and space.
The reason I ask, it's just I always ask this question to people because it's fascinating to me to associate those experiences with the felt senses. So because as you're describing it, I feel this kind of opening in my chest, and I can breathe fully, and there is this space, there's this lightness, you know. There is a sort of stretching, but it not stretching which sounds more like there's some work involved. It's really an opening. There's no
Yes,
effort. It's an effortless allowing in of space that
yes,
I'm feeling. So when I ask, of
yes.
course, these things they're not in the realm of language or the mind. They're in
No.
the realm of the heart and the body. So
And then the other thing that is also an experience is like through the eyes and the ears. Something, for me anyway, it's like everything seems a little bit more HD every time.
right,
My eyes clearer, you know,
yeah,
my
yeah.
eyes are clearer. My ears, it feels like suddenly there's this space that just goes whoo, through my ears, and I can hear differently somehow.
Mm.
So
Aware.
these heightened senses, yeah, heightened awareness is what it is, that comes with it as well.
Yeah, it in that way that often we habitually get into shallow breathing, and when you notice your breath, you think, fucking hell, I'm only using a tiny bit of my capacity to breathe because I'm tense or stressed or anxious, whatever it is. But I think it's similar in the senses, isn't it? When you access that place of openness, then all of those tensions or blockages energetically in the body can just dissolve, and you get the full experience of being alive.
Yes.
And it is ecstatic. you know this is what all the traditions talk about, and it's right under our noses every day. It's
Yeah.
just how it's supposed to be when you're
Mm.
delivered from stress or anxiety, or you're not off somewhere in your head, you're actually here in this moment now. It's an incredibly ecstatic moment to be in, and it has all that potential. And that could even be, no, that's not to say it's all about pleasure, because you could be someone who's got really terrible pain in your body all the time.
Yeah.
The quality of that pain will be experienced differently if you're in that place.
Yes.
Because, yeah, I mean, I'm getting
Like
into
deep,
words.
deep presence, deep presence.
Yeah.
It brings, you're not anywhere else in that moment.
Mm.
You're here and everywhere, all at the
Yeah.
same time. And you're not trying to be anywhere else either. And I think what came up when you were talking about physical pain, when I'm working on myself, with body work, with aches and pains that show up, and it's almost, it's almost like being fully present with that pain, not trying to fix it, not trying to, but just being present with it in that way. It's like that's another, the portal is there. It's the wisdom in the pain. There's wisdom in the pain, whatever the pain, whether it's physical or emotional. There is wisdom in there. It's there for a reason. It's there. It's there to try and get our attention.
Mm.
The body's aches and pains that show up is the body trying to get your attention. And it's saying, look at me,
Mm.
listen to me, watch me. And we're just, it's the unconditioning, as you say, the unmaking of the habits and the strategies that we've inherited or created ourselves, that takes us away from the wisdom that is right there in front of us. And that presence is what allows us to kind of really dive into it and allow whatever needs to be revealed to come from it.
Yeah. Um, Pain is an interesting one. I remember when I first had a trip to the dentist where I asked them not to give me an injection because all
Yeah,
that numbness, and I just didn't like that.
yeah,
So I thought, well, I'll try it without an injection because, whatever it is, it was only really the fear of the pain that was kind of upsetting me, I guess. But when I
mm,
actually had the experience, even though the pain was so intense, it was so intense that it became something else. It was, because as they're drilling into your tooth, when they get down to the bottom, they
mm.
start hitting nerves and things.
Yeah.
And then it's the most
Oh,
exquisite is the word that kept coming up for me. It's the
yes.
most exquisite pain. It's this electrical, high intensity, super focused sensation.
Yeah.
And it's not pleasant, but I really kind of started to just observe it. Like, what is this thing? You
Mm,
know, what is pain? Pain is just sensations, and it's the mental associations that create the anxiety or the fear.
mm.
When all of that is dropped and you're just with the pain, it's just a really unusual sensation that you don't have very often, and it's intense.
Yeah.
It's energetically so intense. because clearly it's the body saying, this is wrong, stop doing this, in the most extreme way it can. But
Yes.
of course, then once the filling was done, the pain's gone almost immediately.
Mm.
So so I got the reinforcing thing was, okay, that was good because I had a bit of intense pain and then it was over and now I don't have that horrible numb thing. So that became a thing I started doing when I went to the dentist. And of
Mm.
course, as soon as you've done it once, you've broken through the fear of what it is, then it's a lot easier the next time because it was mostly the fear that
Yeah.
that was making it a terrifying prospect.
Yeah.
Um, so that really gave me a lesson about the nature of pain. What's harder, though, on the other hand, and the only other pain I found, or the form of pain I've found really difficult, and thankfully I don't experience it very often, is on occasion I've had like a sinus condition or something blocking up my sinuses, and I've
Yeah.
had headaches which were so intense
Yeah.
and prolonged, like just sustained. That's where I found that really difficult. The relentless nature. Anyone who has migraine, I don't know how they do that. That kind of.
Never had a migraine, but I have
No,
friends
I
who.
haven't, thank God. I mean, but I imagine it's something like what I have experienced in those moments
Yeah.
where, and it's so, so, it's the sustained nature that I find difficult. It's like when it's those peak moments
Yeah.
of something, I can be there, but
Yeah.
that constant thing, that's a whole other level of, but I guess in the same way, and I tried to sort of just to be there in that same way with it. But then I would sort of panic, I suppose, or like, oh fuck, I can't handle it. I want to get off, but of course you can't stop it. And then
Yeah.
you go into more thinking about what it is, which makes it worse, and all of that. But I do think you're right. It's the body. It's just the body talking to us, and it's the same with emotional pain. It's just saying, what about this? What is this? What is this thing here?
Yeah.
Maybe come and see what this is, please.
Mhm.
It's like a sort of invitation.
Yeah.
Um, and emotional pain is very different, isn't it? Because
Yeah.
when I when I experience emotional pain, that's when the addictive or the kind of hole filling impulse kicks in with me. It's
Yeah.
like anything but feel the discomfort of that.
Mhm.
But that kind of pain is not as intense as the physical pain, and yet somehow it's more uncomfortable for me. I experience emotional pain
Yes.
seems to be more uncomfortable in a weird way because it's not physically as intense, but it's somehow more overwhelming.
Yeah.
But even that, and this is something that lately I've been getting better at, is just being with that pain and looking at it and going, well, what is it? It's just a set of sensations in your body right now, in this moment. Why do you need to go somewhere else? Why do you, I'll go and eat something, or it's anything to sort of distract me, or I'll go and do something, or I'll busy myself making something, or
Yeah.
what I'd be interested, because it seems
Yeah.
that you're much more a heart person. This is your kind of center of intelligence, maybe. How
Mm.
do you experience that, and what have you learned about emotional pain?
Emotional pain, from my experience, can also be quite physical, depending on the emotion. Rage is extremely physical in my body, anger. Um, and I believe that the physical pain that shows up in our body is related to the emotional pain. We just haven't correlated them together. And um, hmm. And I think it's easy to, with the emotional pain, to one thing that I've noticed in myself and in other people that I've worked with is that the trying to understand it, and the narrative that comes with it, as important as it can be to get to the root of it, it can also be a massive distraction trying to understand it, rather than just, okay, let's let go of all the words that we're trying to, because what I notice when there's like, we want to talk about what you're feeling at the moment, what triggered it. But often what triggered it is not actually why it's there. It's come from way, 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 way back somewhere. It might not even be in this lifetime. I don't know. It's just like, it could be. And so it's the, I don't believe that you need to have the tools. You need to find your own tools, each person, of how, what works for you to allow you to be with whatever's showing up in your body, physical, emotional, without trying to attach anything to it. And feel that energy, because emotion is energy in motion. And so any emotion that we have suppressed is going to be energy that is just blocked inside of us. And some of the trauma that has come up for me, I can't even really remember what happened. I was so young, but I could feel it so emotionally and physically in my body, and it just wants to come out, wants to move, because at that point, when it was imprinted, whatever happened, you freeze. I froze, and it freezes, and then you create these strategies in order to survive. And so when it comes out, it's like it just wants to move. So whatever tools help us to help those move, without attaching a narrative, without attaching words, without feeding into it, it's still a distraction.
Yeah, that's such an important point, and definitely something I've been guilty of, is trying to understand. Again, using the head
Using the head,
as a
yeah.
way to get to what is that ancient wound, and trying to understand it. But in a way, I guess it was how I opened the door to it. And then finally, after kind of doing that a few times, realizing, oh, there's something else you can do, and that's just feel it, and
Yeah.
don't make a story about it. No,
Right.
great to hear that again, because it is a trap I always fall into.
Yeah, and I
Get
recently
stuck.
had a really powerful experience, with that exact thing. That I've done a lot of work on my stories and where they come from, and I understand them, and there's something that came up recently, a really root primal wounding with my father, and that came up again. And although I understood it, and I've my relationship with my father is transformed because of it, and I hadn't felt the heartbreak.
Mm.
I hadn't actually allowed myself to feel in in that moment when my heart broke. And so I had to feel it in order to truly let it go. I probably sobbed for like 3 days, maybe even longer, and I just allowed myself to feel that little girl
Mm.
whose heart broke in that moment. I didn't need to understand it anymore. I just needed to feel it. So I think there's this, from what's becoming clear to me, is this process that comes up where we first understand it with our minds, and then we need to go into the body and the spirit. So there's this process, you know, that happens with each story. There's the narrative, there's the physical, and then there's the energetics as well of that story that's being held within us.
Yeah, and the energetic habits that we hold in
Mm-hmm.
our bodies, you know, and the energetic patterns or thought patterns we hold in our heads, and
Yeah.
whatever the language of the heart is, does a similar thing.
Mm-hmm.
The, yeah, it's a really interesting idea, or a kind of tool. It's not an idea. It's a really interesting tool for moving these things. Is that thing of going and, you know, that through meditation. I'm not a big meditator, but when I have done it, and one of the things I got from doing a Vipassana retreat, which I found very hard, just to physically sit was so challenging for me. But the whole idea of Sankharas, which are basically what we're talking about, I think that's what they call them, which are these, when you get into that place of just being with yourself and noticing it,
Mm-hmm.
then these old energetic Sankharas, these things that you've held onto, you start to notice them. And then by noticing them, without trying to do anything about them, you can actually feel, like you're saying, feel those things again, but actually feel them, not quickly push them aside, not bury them,
Yeah.
not suppress them,
Yeah.
not lock them away in a dungeon, but actually just accept them
Yes.
and allow them to be. And that's the mechanism which enables them to move through you and unblock and detach in that way. And you know, this is one of the things that, why isn't this part of a school curriculum? You know, these are the things that you should be learning in
Oh
school,
my
right?
God. Not me on that one.
Imagine a school where you get all
Yeah.
these tools, the real tools that you actually need to live a
Real
good life.
tools. And
Yeah.
you know what?
Mm.
You know, the other day I was having a conversation with my son, who's 17, and he was talking to me about heartbreak, and when you know, and that was such an amazing moment for me, um, that he was able to talk to me about it, because you know, I think it's something that especially teenagers, and I know I could never talk to my parents about anything like that, or anyone maybe at all, or even allow myself to feel it clearly, because you know I was so suppressed and repressed and all the rest of it. And so in this, what I also have noticed with this work is the more that I release within myself, the more I see the ripple effect happening around me with my children. And it is the greatest gift for me to see that. And it really has allowed me to really be responsible for what I want to leave in this world. And you know, when we you know, I think, yeah, this is our, it's a legacy that we're leaving for our children and the generations that come after us. You know, allowing ourselves to empty everything that we've that has the distortions that have arisen throughout time for us, um, in order for the next generations to experience something really new. Because you know, I don't know how much I'm going to see of it in my lifetime, really, to be quite honest. Um, and it's really not about me anymore. And so when I do this, yes, I do it for myself, but it's also, wow, I can see the impact. I can see the impact that it has on the people around me. And you know, for instance, with my ex, there was a time when I didn't think that we would ever speak again. And from the work that we've both done, you know, we're really, really great friends. And there's a lot of love between us now as we, you know, continue to grow together apart. And I really feel that we each have this responsibility to look at these emotions, to look at these things that show up, that this may be the way out, is to empty ourselves of all these things that are in our way, that are distorting the world in front of us.
Yeah, that's such an important thing to touch on, because these things that we hold on to, some of them came from our parents, and they'd been carrying them their whole lives, and they got them from their parents, and so on and so on. Some of these things are energetically transferred through the generations. And of course, you pick up fresh ones in your own life and your experiences. So it's a constant process of of feeling them to release them, feeling them to release them. And if you can do anything, I believe now, if I can do, you know, because as soon as you become aware of these things, you become straight away aware of, oh fuck, I've already dumped massive loads of shit onto my own children. I've already given them suitcases full of shit to deal with from the moment they were born, you know, and they're gonna find their own things on the way as well. But I do feel like, well, if I can just take on one of these things or two of them, or then by me doing that, I'm doing it for all the generations, both forwards and backwards, because in a way it sort of heals the past at the same time as the future. You know, it removes that burden from the generations after. And you know, even now, even though my kids are born, if they're around me and, like you're saying, if they're witnessing, even unconsciously or on a whole other level than noticing it, they're just around me processing something like that, it's having an effect on them, and it will therefore have an effect on their children, and so on and so on. And even backwards to, you know, to my parents, it will, if I do this thing in myself, even if it's unspoken, even if it will be felt somehow.
It will,
You know,
instantly. Sometimes it's really incredible. You know, I've witnessed it myself. And, you know, there's this, responsibility that we have, to, to be responsible for what shows up, and to be responsible for what we're transmitting. Because whatever we hold inside of us, whether we can see it or not, we are transmitting that energy out from us.
absolutely. It is, responsibility is the right word. It's a function of actually becoming an adult, a responsible adult, which is obviously missing from our cultural, you know, our sort of our learning. We're not shown these things or taught these things, or it's becoming, perhaps, you know, just through a conversation like this or the work that you're doing, lots of other people are doing. We are now starting to weave this into our culture, where it becomes a thing that you can do. And I certainly sense that any human future there is will, an element of it will be this healing of of humanity. You know, that will be an important part of any culture that's now being born or emerging out of the fragmentation and collapse of the old one. Has to be, there has to be a big chunk of healing in that culture that's being born, because there's so much work to do there. Um, in fact, it's not even that there's work to do, it's unavoidable. We're so choked up with the traumas of the past and the way we have lived. And as we become aware of it, of what we've actually been doing all these years, it it becomes imperative, or it's unavoidable that we have to take it on now.
Yeah, I
So
think it's unavoidable. It's definitely, and it's one of those things that you can avoid it, you can distract from it, but it will continue to come back. It will continue to come back until it, from what I understand, of, I think it's called the hero's journey or something. And one of those is this is part of human experience here, is to suffer, and the suffering leads us back to the remembering. But and it's unavoidable, but there is an element of choice. You can choose to start now, or you can wait till you've exhausted every single option and you're on the floor. But it's going to happen anyway.
yeah, and there are lots of options.
And
There are lots of ways to avoid it.
there are a lot of ways, and this is what this is what I've noticed with my own journey is the more I avoid or have distracted in the past from looking at things, it comes back and it slaps me in the face even harder.
Well, and in our defense as humans, as individuals, our entire culture is built on ways of avoiding it and perpetuating it, and causing more harm and damage. So it's hard to, if you're born into a culture like that, it's a miracle that anyone comes to a place of realizing that's not working, and tries to find out what it is. That gives me great hope. I'm always super inspired by the human spirit and the true healthy nature of the human spirit, no matter what the circumstances or the kind of horrific ideological prisons that we build for ourselves in cultures and societies. That human spirit always pushes through, always wants freedom, always wants to heal and do the right thing. And so it's a tremendous kind of unstoppable force that's in everybody, and if you can just kind of find where the tap is, and it may be all rusted up, and you need to whack it with a hammer, but if you can just open it a little bit, once it starts to flow, there's a tremendous force behind that, which connects us to everything else. So yeah, it's a great sort of sense of hope for me always, as I look around and see, God, what we're doing now, we're kind of heading towards some technological totalitarian hell. Why are we doing this? Have we learned nothing? Have we not seen what we've done time and time before, and what's happening in other parts of the world?
Yeah.
But no, but always
another version of what's happened with various different empires and stuff throughout the times.
forever, yeah.
Forever, yeah. But at the same time, there's this thing that I always come back to, with this: everything is sacred. Everything. Everything, whether we like it or not, everything is sacred. So it's kind of all part of the plan.
Yeah, sure.
We just don't know what the plan is, but it is part of the plan. And so how can we all bring that sacredness and meaning into each moment? We get to choose how we do that. And the more that we can, everything is sacred, and remember that.
Yeah, that is a good thing to remember. Well, I call myself a recovering idealist or perfectionist, because that's definitely where I started out.
Yeah.
And the world was never ever gonna satisfy me. It was never gonna be the way I wanted it to be. But I'm coming to terms with that over time, like accepting it. As you say, it is all part of, it is all part of what it is. It is all the divine plan, as it were. So yeah, it's fascinating because it's one of those paradoxes, there is this impulse to fix it, make it better and make it right, but there also needs to be this acceptance that it's already right and perfect, and as it should be.
As it should be. The world, human experience is about polarity. It's about good and bad, dark and light. all of it is sacred, whether we like it or not. Then what's really interesting is then to look at our likes and our dislikes, because that's when, that's where the distortion has come in.
Well, they are the parts of ourselves, right, that all need to be integrated.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
they're great teachers,
yeah.
those things that repulse you, or kind of you really don't like. Those are the places to go and have a look.
Definitely.
I
More often than not, we don't like it because there's something that we see of ourselves in that we don't want to look at. We don't want to accept that, oh, I might actually have evil in me, but I just choose not to express that in this human experience. But we all have the potential. We all have that
Well,
in
yeah,
us. We're
and
all born with everything that and that's really hard to accept, or can be hard to accept, and yeah.
well, and then it gets projected outwards, which is what you see all the time.
Yes.
And a great cultural example was the whole Donald Trump episode, because I saw so much projecting going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, like an hysterical kind of hatred of this man,
Mhm.
who was really showing a lot of those kind of more liberal minded people a deep buried part of themselves that hadn't been integrated. It was so obvious from the responses. It was and fascinating to see that on such a wide level. But that's it happens all the time, doesn't it? Day to day, we're meeting people who are like having strong reactions,
Yeah.
both ways, either positively or negatively. And in both cases, it's just mirroring something that's in you that hasn't been fully explored or accepted or integrated in some way or expressed.
Yeah.
Um, those are powerful things to notice.
Yeah.
Something I've started doing more and more is taking notice of those moments where I have a strong reaction to something, because that's a huge signpost saying, have a look at this.
Yeah.
you know
Definitely. I think that I've had some in the last few months with the desire thing as well. It's like when what I notice is when I have an expectation because of this desire, I want things to go a certain way because I want it. I want it so bad. And when it doesn't, I can literally feel this huge tantrum, this person inside of me going, but I want it this way. And having to kind of just let this go and go, okay, I'm feeling this. I'm not gonna go and try and manipulate the outside world so that I get my way. I'm just gonna be with this that's coming through me right now. And not project it on anyone else. um, and when, the annoyance from whoever it is that's on the other side that has annoyed me because I wanted things. It's not about them, it's my annoyance. I need to be responsible for my annoyance and thank them for showing me my annoyance that needs to go.
Yeah, in those situations, it's often, and maybe it's always, a two-way thing, isn't it? It's like both of the parties get shown something at the same time.
Absolutely, yeah.
That, I mean, that's
Mhm.
maybe that's all relationships where there are, maybe that's all relationships full stop, is whenever you meet someone, you're kind of mirroring, you're mirroring. Uh,
Yeah.
um, and when the mirrors fall away, and I've been lucky enough in a few moments in my life to experience this, where there's nothing being mirrored, there's just this pure witnessing of each other, and then in those moments there is no other person, it's
Yeah.
just one.
Yeah.
This is what I understand when I hear kind of spiritual teachers or people talking about oneness, or this kind of idea of unity. I've experienced moments in my life where I've had that,
Mhm.
where I've fallen away, the other person has fallen away. I mean, I've had it very much, or it has been more easy for me to experience that with nature, with the world, where I drop away and I'm just part of this one thing with nature. And I've had it when I've been creating, making artworks and sculptures. There have been moments where that same thing has happened. And then in a much rarer for me, but perhaps more moving ultimately on reflection, have been those moments where it's happened with a person, where there has just been one thing and the sense of self and separation has dropped away. And yeah, that peace and that openness that you talked about before, I get a sense of that in that moment. That kind of, there's nothing to do,
No,
nowhere to go,
it's
there's
freedom.
no desire. It's freedom. It's true
Freedom.
freedom.
It's true freedom. And word that kept coming up when you were speaking, I'm thinking of relationships as, as I now embark on a new relationship, with all the knowledge of how relationships haven't worked for me in the past, and not wanting to repeat those same patterns again, and is unconditional love. It's like, how can I learn? How can I learn to love with no conditions? And what does that look like? What does that mean for me? What do I have to do in order to love with no conditions within relationships, whether it's romantic or not? And I think that, that we are, we're kind of born into a world where love often comes with many conditions. And it's in looking in those, those conditions is for me anyway, it's been about learning, all the times that I've learned that love came with conditions have guided me here to now, where I'm now really truly being able to experience how to love with no conditions, and what that really means for me. And with that comes freedom, true freedom.
Yeah, that's something. I'm not quite there yet, but I see it. I see the path, and I've.
Definitely not there yet. I'm just
Oh, yeah, it's good to put
aspiring
yourself
to
in that
be.
place, right?
Yes.
It's like, yeah, you've got to kind of, you've got to be it, haven't you? You've got to experience being there to know what it feels like, so you can actually pull yourself to it. But yeah, what's clear to me and what I've learned and what's come up is that to start on that particular journey, I have to love myself first.
Yes.
This is my biggest challenge, and this is what I guess this is where I'm at right now, having just come out of a relationship, but really very grateful for that relationship, because I feel like I got to the very bottom of understanding everything about how I've been relating in the past or up to this point. And it really is the realization, the overwhelming object in front of me is, you need to learn how to love yourself.
Yes.
Do that now first.
Yes.
And then through doing that, there is this potential for a loving relationship, whatever that means. And I don't really know what that means anymore. Or even, I'm even starting to give up any idea of needing or shaping what that might look like. I think that's the other thing, is a kind of
Yes.
trusting in, if I can learn how to love myself and then just be open to whatever wants to show up, rather than then wanting to have a certain thing, or just really from that place, what's possible then? And maybe everything, well, I imagine everything changes anyway from that point, because if I've found a way to fill that hole, which has always been there, which I've always been trying to fill,
Yes.
this kind of impossible to fill, bottomless, infinite hole. If I can my intuition is if I can find love for myself in that profound way, then the whole will become a whole with a W. it'll
Yeah.
it'll transform in that kind of weird way that happens where, or suddenly the whole will be, there'll only be a whole and it'll be all right, you
Yeah.
know. I
It's almost
won't
like
try to fill.
the spell gets broken.
Yes.
The spell gets broken, and the well that you thought was a bottomless, empty pit was in fact full all the time.
Yeah, full of the
Full all the
just
time.
life-giving water. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
then also the other thing with the loving myself, loving yourself, loving ourselves, which was kind of the huge journey for me of this self-love. And now it comes, now what's showing up last year has been, well, who, when I say love myself, who is myself? Who
Yeah.
am I loving?
Mm.
And actually, I'm loving God. I'm love because that this is divine. That the relationship is the only relationship that will ever fulfill any of us, as far as I can see, and have we've been passed down through with all the sages of all times, is our relationship with God, with the divine, or whatever you want to call it. Um, and that's what loving myself is about, cultivating this relationship with this physical human experience that I have, but also with what's inside here as well.
So with this relationship with this thing that's greater than you, that's eternal, that's in everything,
Yes,
that is actually the source of everything.
yes, yes,
That's the love. That's the loving of myself, or it's much bigger than
yeah.
that small me. Yeah, that's
First step is the little things like cooking yourself a nice meal and having a bath, loving yourself, which a lot of us find really hard to do, these simple self-love human things. But so for me, that's how it started, was how would I stop abusing my body, abusing myself, and loving this human body. And then how that's evolved now is, oh, this relationship now, this is the greatest love story I'm ever going to have. And because when I'm here in my heart in this love story, it's so easy to love anyone
mm,
back, and to give that love and radiate love. If we could, all you need to do is walk in a room and radiate it. People will feel it.
sure. And then it will inspire it in them, and
Yeah.
it will come from them towards you as well. So it's this.
Being touched by grace is inexplicable. And when you have been touched by grace, it's something that just wants to be passed on without you really having to do anything. Like even the word service has kind of been exploring that. It doesn't mean that I have to call myself the shamanic coach and have clients. I can sit in a room with someone and just sit with them, and that is service. Lighting my fire every morning, sitting by my fire, stoking my fire.
Yeah,
Gratitude, that is service.
I this is something that has occurred to me before as well, is this thing of, if I'm the only person witnessing in this moment this thing that I'm doing, but I'm doing it in such a beautiful, loving, truthful way, it's okay. It's enough. It's like I have this idea of, I get a good feeling when I think about sort of monks in a monastery somewhere going through their daily routine and praying and doing and tending the garden, and it just feels like it's good that they're doing that. It's good for the world that people are having those experiences, because it's feeding the kind of soul of everybody, of everything.
Yeah.
So, and this is something, in a way, it's something I've been studying or exploring maybe most of my life without realizing it, is this just trying to and I always called it art, but actually what it is something much bigger than that.
Yeah.
But art's just the word I use. It's like the way you do the washing up or something like that. You can really turn it
Mm.
into a work of art or an act of worship or an experience of the divine. And if you're doing it and doing it in that way, then it really is that, and it's doing something profound in the universe. It and I think it's a useful tool or technique perhaps to make some of the kind of mundane necessities of life incredible experiences. I mean,
Oh,
it would be more challenging to do something I don't like doing in that way, and that's probably where it would be interesting to focus on, because for whatever reason, something like washing up I like doing anyway. I'm kind of,
yes.
it's my sort of sense of order, my kind of analness of wanting things to be tidy. So I get a tremendous sense of satisfaction, or even not even tremendous sense of satisfaction. Maybe I just feel all right when things are sorted out in that way. But still, because I noticed that, I could turn it into a craft. I could sort of improve the way I did it to a point where it did become a kind of a ballet or a kind of work of art or
Yeah.
some kind of choreography that does something really practical and useful, but has an aesthetic value that gives me tremendous pleasure. So
Love that. Yeah. It's funny because I've been doing the same with washing up recently, taking just these simpler. It's like making the ordinary extraordinary,
mm,
rather than always looking for those highs and extraordinary. So how can and for me it's been more about, okay, well, this is water. Let's connect to the elements as I stick my hands into this bowl of water, and what it does, it purifies, it cleans, and as it does, and it's this whole, it can become this beautiful spiritual process, um like with anything, like with the lighting a fire as well, is connecting to the elements, all that are there, and the warmth that comes from it, and um making it sacred. I think that's, for me, is it's about bringing the sacredness into every single moment that I remember to, and live the ceremony of life, be the ceremony of life.
mm,
You don't have to sit and say, I'm going to do ceremony.
yeah,
To be being in ceremony comes from here, intention and heart. Um, yeah, and then life, your point of reference changes. Life looks different. You're looking at life from a different place.
yeah. This idea of being the ceremony, that's a really interesting one to me. Makes a lot of sense, because there's something in my own journey artistically which this speaks to really strongly,
Mm.
because I was always interested in all forms of medium and expression, and I could never like just paint or just be a sculptor, or
Mm.
and producing these artifacts which then went into a marketplace, or it all just didn't, it felt tiny, and the thing that I was interested in was as big as the universe. So what's been slowly appearing, and it's mixed in with personal development, spirituality, art, maybe all areas of life, even kind of medicine, science, healing. And perhaps it points to the origins of human creativity and art and healing. And, perhaps in the very beginning, though, the kind of role of shaman and doctor and inventor and artist were actually all in one person. Or
Mm.
even in every person to some degree. I don't know, but
Mm.
there's this real sense of, and this is something that's just opening up for me now after reflecting on what I've been doing for like the past 20 years, is this potential of this kind of multifaceted, holistic art form that is actually just a way of life. And it is like a ceremonial, creative way of being.
Mhm.
And it's unclear, but every time someone says something like you said, then it kind of, it's a little bit of it goes, oh yeah, it's that. That's another
Yeah.
indicator. And I don't know what it is, but it's fascinating me. And I know that moving forward, whatever I'm creating or doing, it will all be an expression of this thing that's emerging. And I see it in other people, and I notice it around in what other people are doing. And it's almost like a shared language that's starting to be spoken. And I'm hearing words of it here and there. And I'm seeing kind of ritual actions or things that look like it.
Mm.
And it's really interesting. And it's just, it's the paradox of it is it looks like lots of very individuated people spontaneously and collectively creating something together. um, yeah.
I think you're right, and I love that. It resonates, and the art creativity is the key. Creativity is the key, and it has been for me. You know, this these last few months. It's whenever I've had a huge release, suddenly this piece of music will just come through me within seconds. And I'm just, and I've made, and a composition has just come out, or I have to sit down and I can't stop drawing. It just has to, but I'm not doing it for any particular reason. I'm not writing a piece of music so I can post it somewhere and tell everyone I'm right. It's this expression that needs to come through me in that moment. And I don't need to be attached to it, but it's helping to create in that moment. It's an expression of creation in that moment. And it's really amazed me because, you know, I feel like I've been blocked for the last 25 years creatively in that way. And piano, I was a classical pianist when I was young, and from the age 22, I just pushed it away. I was like, don't want to do this anymore. And it seems to have something, I had a huge release around it, and now this, it just wants to come through, but not always. It's not like I'm not sitting down and thinking, right, I'm going to make a composition. It's like, okay, I need to sit down, and it just comes through me. And it feels like you said, it's this, somehow I know it's part of this creative creation thing that's going on right now. Adding to the resonance and the vibrations out there. Yeah.
It's good to hear. Have you
Mm.
got a piano there?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, yeah,
Great.
yeah.
My daughter, my youngest daughter, who's 8, she started playing the piano.
Oh,
Um,
wonderful.
it seems quite a natural thing for her.
Oh, lovely.
Um, and I've always sort of messed around with the guitar a bit, but I've been learning a bit of piano as well. But what's been so exciting is just been playing music with her.
Yeah.
It was kind of a surprise because I've always loved music. Um, but I just had a few moments where we've just been playing stuff like spontaneously together, and it's so exciting. I'm like, oh
It
my god,
really is.
like, I can actually play music. What a wonderful way for us to relate and to meet,
Yeah.
and she feels it because she's a very feely person, and
Mm.
she immediately feels it and gets excited too because she realizes, wow, we can. This is how we
Connect.
can actually meet
Yeah.
in a very pure way. And yeah, it's such a wonderful thing, such a
It
gift.
really is. And I mean, I love all instruments, but the piano for me is an instrument that it just goes straight into my heart. the sound, the resonance, the, you know, what comes through. And if you say she's a really feely person, it's an incredible way to express whatever you're feeling through the music, um, if there are no words.
Yeah, it's got a big,
Cool.
it really is a kind of big
Yeah,
heart broadcaster, isn't it? You
yeah,
know,
it is.
and
Yeah,
potential.
yeah,
And I love the way the hands are involved on the piano. There's
yeah,
something very graceful and beautiful about the way the hands move. When I watch a really good pianist who's doing it properly,
yeah,
um, yeah, it's the whole thing. It's fascinating to me, and it's very straightforward in terms of the way the notes are laid out is visually really obvious. Because on the guitar, you can look at the fretboard and you don't really know, there's nothing obvious to tell you that that note is that.
yes,
Because there is a pattern on the keyboard,
yes,
it's like a navigational aid, which I find really helps me kind of know where I'm going, you know,
yes,
the way in. I
yeah,
feel like it's one of the easiest instruments to get into for someone who has no experience, because you could just play the white keys and it's going to sound all right
yeah,
because you're in the key of C. So
right,
that's a great way in. Yeah,
yeah,
I had a something wonderful that we did here a couple of years ago. I stopped doing it, but I used to do a weekly class for homeschool kids called Jedi School, where
awesome.
we were outside and we'd do all kind of, we'd have a fire and we'd be making things and we'd be in the woods, and it was very much a kind of outdoor fully immersive experience, and really trying to develop all these different aspects of what it is to be human.
Mm,
You know, we'd have listening circles and talk as
mm,
well. There are all these layers to it. But one of the things we did every time we got together was I'd do like a half-hour music session. But we didn't, so we had drums, we've got all kinds of drums and percussion instruments, and there's a guitar here and there's the piano. And we would just, you know, and I had a mouth organ in C. So I'd say, like, somebody play, anyone play the piano, just play the white keys. You can't get it wrong. Just feel it. So there was nothing to get right or wrong.
no, yeah,
It was really just let's play together. And we just do these spontaneous jams with anyone could do it because you didn't have to be able to play. And so many times these incredible things just emerged,
yeah,
really moving, beautiful pieces of music.
wow,
And more importantly, even, it was that connection that occurred, because it's a very different way of connecting and maybe a much more direct way of connecting to people. Once you drop into some music,
yeah,
you're in a place or a kind of state of consciousness that is not your ordinary state, and it's very easy to meet people there. And
yes.
maybe there's a lot of heart in it as well. I mean, there is, not maybe.
Music touches
Sure.
the majority of people are touched by music,
Yeah.
you know, in various different ways. It gets into the body very easily. So it is a really good way to connect in that way. And to remember, like you said, you know, this is something that I've had being a classically trained pianist with so many rules. I've had to teach myself that there are no wrong notes. There are no wrong notes. And sometimes, even if something sounds something, you know, a discord is actually really important. And that sound needed to be heard. And there are no wrong notes ever.
Well, what's great about your position is that you've got that classical training, which gives you the technical
Yes, it does. Yeah.
prowess,
Yeah.
which opens up a massive universe for you. Then, once you access that pure creative side, the
Yeah.
two things together are what's needed for incredible music. Obviously, you know, you can be all kind of feely and have the expression, but if you don't have the basic craft of what you're doing, you
Yes, it's true.
can't express it. So
Yeah. Hmm.
it's a wonderful and interesting way to come at it. um, I'm doing an experiment that relates to this at the moment, where because my sort of left brain, very controlling, precise, perfectionist side, always messes with anything creative I do. I've started doing this series of drawings where I'm not looking at the paper. So I'm doing like self portraits at the moment, but I'm going to start drawing other people. But
Yeah.
I'm just looking at them and drawing without looking at what I'm doing as a
Uh,
way to stop me being so kind of controlling, to
yeah.
free up, to just feel more
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
I'm seeing, to translate what I'm seeing into feeling, and
Yes.
to put my feeling into creating more beautiful lines rather than
Mm.
precision. It's such an interesting exercise.
Wow.
And in terms of the way it looks, for me, I much prefer it to something, because in that way that you can do a very accurate drawing, but often it's a great skill to do a great, accurate, well kind of drawn thing that also feels good, that has a kind of has that dimension to it that makes it, for me, a great piece of art.
Yeah.
Because it can often feel dead or something. So it's like I'm going the extreme other way to just find the feeling, and then perhaps I'll bring it back and try and get technically better at the drawing. But maybe not. I don't know, because I
No,
seem
I
to.
think the word that came up when you're talking is almost finding the essence.
Yeah, yeah,
Finding the essence. You
yes,
want the
yes.
essence to be to come through in that piece of art,
Yeah.
which sometimes can be lost if you're trying to do it too perfectly.
Yeah, it's the felt thing, and then perhaps it ties into to where we were beginning with this thing of
Yeah.
getting away from the head and the that imbalance of
Mhm.
rational thinking, going more into the felt, into the expressive, into the instinctual.
Yes.
That there's definitely an attraction to that realm. Without obviously, the danger is then you go off there and you leave the head completely. There
Yeah.
needs to be a head, but I think the
Yes.
percentage of head is a lot smaller than
Mhm.
perhaps the heart and the felt sense. I don't think they're equally necessary, but some sort of balance between them
Yeah.
clearly
Yeah.
is what we need for,
Definitely.
for health. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, I feel like we might have reached the point there.
I think so.
Oh, well, that was wonderful. Thanks for that. That was a real heart journey. I'm glad I've been longing for a bit more of that, I feel. So,
Mm.
yeah, thank you so much
Me too. That was really great. Really, I really love having these conversations. There's something that happens when we have these conversations, these types of conversations. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, it's great when somebody's willing to show up in that way and to open in that way.
Mm,
Um, it makes for a great connection for me. I'm
mm,
really grateful to anyone who's it takes courage as well,
mm.
I feel. So I'm very grateful for that. So thanks. Let's do it again soon.
Definitely. Oh,
Great.
okay.
Okay.
All right then.
Bye.
Bye.
See you soon.